Recording started.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's Matrexit discussion group call for tactical sovereignty. This is, what is it? Mayday, 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 May 1st. And here we are having a little chat regarding a conversation that I had earlier this week. I was talking with a friend of mine, and he said, Brian, just hold on a second. And then this other voice came on and started rambling away, which I automatically knew who it was, and had a very enlightening conversation, I think. And so we are going to play part of that this evening. And we've got, of course, my co-host Keith is here with us, and we've got Haya is here with us as well. If you two would like to say hello.
Greetings, everybody. Enjoy the evening.
And I'm just going to jump over Earthlings. Just going to jump over here and change my background. There we go. Move back over to the event from yesterday. We had a solar eclipse. This is a photo taken from Argentina. It was a quick trip over there, or down there rather, and back. My arms are a little sore today, but either way. Well, if we want to start out, and I guess we'll play the clip until we come to a point maybe where there's a question or time for some discussion. Then you can just pause it and we can just do that intermittently. But this is a conversation with the personality known as Eeon from his YouTube channel, Regis Right. So if you want to go ahead.
It was 2012 when I did the video and when I was going over the information. Now, most of the California statutes I know since a teenager because those were the laws I went over in the first instance. And so I would have gone over the registered agent junk when I was thinking about setting up corporations, because when I started hearing that word entrepreneur, especially the way it was spelled, it stuck with me. And then I heard about all these people becoming entrepreneurs and starting their own businesses and making all this money. And so I wanted to become an entrepreneur. So I was about 15 years old. And so I started doing research. So I've been setting up corporations since I was 18. Well, technically, because I wasn't actually setting up a business. I was just setting up the corporation. And so I would go over the laws concerning that. But I never had the capital to do anything. Now I have capital to do something. And now we have we'll have 20 different corporations as of the end of this coming month. Because corporations are done a dozen. So the resignation of registered agent, perfect angle to go at by sending it to the Secretary of State. You know what? Now that I come to think about it, that's exactly what I did. I did send it to the Secretary of State because that's where it must go. And let me throw this by you, okay?
Okay, so what I wanted to find out, he said he was setting up the corporations. Now, he also mentioned about resignation. That's opposite of setting up. There's a difference between setting up a corporation versus what you did, Brian, was resignation of registered agents, saying, I don't want to be the registered agent. But he just said that he set up like 21 corporations. So he says, that's exactly what I did. I'm like, what part did you do? Did you sign up with the Secretary of State to set up the corporations? Or did you do the resignation of registered agent like what Brian was saying? So that's what I was wondering.
Right. Well,
done what you suggested.
In setting up his corporations, what he did, and the same thing is done, if like you set up LLC or whatever, it's all done through the Secretary of State. And you become the spokesman, or the agent for that organization, as being a founding member of it. Right now, what I did was the situation we find ourselves with from birth is that that certificate of live birth is evidence of a registered organization being organized and registered, right? And so that's their entity. That's the citizen. That's evidence of the citizen. So they see you as being a representative of
Right.
that thing that they created. And so it was that I resigned my position from and refused a position for. But that
Exactly.
doesn't mean that you still can't go and
Exactly.
then
But
set
then
up your
another thing I
own
heard him
person.
say. The other
Yeah, I
thing
was
I
gonna
heard
say,
him say was that he did not have the capital to do something. Well, when I filed for my LLC in 2008, they send you a stamp for that seal, and then they send you certificate things and this big packet, this big binder, so you can make your own money basically and talk about the different stocks and trading and whatever. I didn't know what to do with any of that kind of stuff at the time, but when he had said something about he didn't have any capital to do anything with it, I have a feeling that that right there is what gives you the capital, because you're writing your own negotiable instruments. That's what gives you the capital right there. You know, to
there could be
make
a
your own
possibility to
money,
that.
make your own bonds. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, look at how Elon Musk and all those other guys, Apple and Bill Gates and all them, how do you think that they create their own money? It's the paper that they're creating there. He says he didn't have the capital to do anything when he had 21 corporations. But when they
Well,
give you that seal and that gold stamp thing, you can make your own monies right there with that.
yeah, that gets into, I mean, a lot
I
of
just didn't
guesswork
know how
as
to
far
do
as,
that at the time.
right. That's the thing. It gets in a lot of guesswork as to then how can you create your own capital. But you have to look at also who knows what kind of corporations he had set up and what the intent behind them was for, because it might have been things where there would have been needed other additional capital from other resources or whatever in order to continue forward. At that time, I think he was really just getting his
Well,
feet
if there's
wet
no
and getting
money,
set up on it. All right. All right. Yeah, continue it.
yeah, because there's no money. It's all in negotiable instruments. Okay, I'll continue here. Let me turn that back on. Okay, here we go.
Because when I look at what the state has done, is they went and basically created this legal entity in a name that's very similar to your name, you know what I mean? And you look at, I remember looking up, the duties or responsibilities of the Secretary of State, and part of it was, they are the holder of all certificates, bonds, registrations, and any businesses or entities that are set up are all done through the Secretary of State. So I thought, wait a second, why not do the same thing they did? So what I did is I went and did a DBA in Florida, or on Florida, with the Secretary of State. And when I got on the site, it said, you cannot DBA your legal name. I said, okay, let's see what happens. And I went through it, and I got down to the box that said, is this a trust, a partnership, incorporated, unincorporated? And I thought, here's the key. It's unincorporated. I went and did it. The next morning, I got a confirmation email from the Secretary of State that the DBA had been approved. So what did I do? I did the same thing they did. I created my own entity in a name that sounds very similar to the name that they did that was given to me upon my nativity. Okay. And that's what people are doing. They're setting up corporations and things like that. They've got DBAs and all these, one guy might freaking have, half a dozen different companies with different DBAs. That goes right back to what the Constitution said about being secure in your papers and your persons. Oh, yes. I'm fully aware. That's what the SAT packs, that's what they were designed under. That's why they even have a notice of registered agent and a DBA assignment in the actual SAT pack. Because so I get exactly what you were doing and what you were accomplishing. And I say again, because you have accomplished that, then you need to go to the next level. And what is that level? Well, you've already told them, this is who I am. This is what I am not. And so all you got to do is correct the stupid record.
So this, this takes me back to the question I'm sure has been floating on a lot of people's minds. What are those securities in the minor account? Are there securities there that were established by the state, or is this just a reference to securities that may have been set up by a guardian, when you were a minor?
Well, you got to go back to the act that created the securities, and that was the New Deal. Remember, they took money out. So everybody's saying, well, they took money out, they leveraged it, and they collateralized this. Well, they did. It says it represents a mortgage on all of the homes and all of the property of the people. Well, people are property, and so them and everything they possess has been leveraged or mortgaged. So, of course, they would have to create securities. Why? Because nobody's property may be seized and or taken without and used for public use without just compensation. Well, if the government takes and puts a mortgage on your property, that means they're using your property or leasing it for public use. Because the government cannot be private. It has to be public.
And there's compensation there that you just haven't accessed.
These are your compensation. And that's why I've been telling people, you need to be asking. Now we have proof that the vital records, vital statistics, pays the state per birth certificate. So where's compensation? This is what we're not doing. And because we're not doing it, and that's where the problem is created.
Yep, I'm missing a step.
Yeah, well, what happens again, with the record from vital statistics, with the laws that I've just been talking about on video, you take that, you don't need all of the laws, but I would say you can contact the Library of Congress. I don't know if they'll let you get a copy of a page from the law, because if they could let you get a certified copy of a particular page from the law, that would be perfect, because then you can get a copy of the exact section where it is quoted in the law, but I don't think they'll do that because they want money, so they'll make you order the whole thing, and to order the whole record, it's hundreds of dollars in the eventual. I'll be contacting them myself personally to order my documents shortly. But once you have that, you now have the record you use as exhibits and say, we have an agreement. I'm part of that contract. The New Deal is a contract. So I am part of that contract. I'm a party to the contract. Where is my compensation? You received my value. You have a mortgage on all of my property. Where's my compensation? And it has to be just. It cannot be just according to what a case law said. It has to be just according to my means. It has to equal what you receive. It says just compensation, so that means equal value. Right? And people are not receiving equal value. All this stuff about them taking somebody's home for value? No. That's not what you give me. You don't give me the market value. The market value could be down this year. I've had this property for 40 years. So you have to give me the value of this property for 40 years, and the nostalgia and the heritage, and this is in the family for this many years, and we have memories. You have a whole lot more in compensation than give me what the market values my property. Yeah. Nobody has ever brought those things up. Or they have ignored them. Cool?
It's all an interpretation of consideration.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to pause it right there because I have a couple questions. You guys talked about secure in your papers and persons. That's what you mentioned. And he said something about his SAT pack thing was telling the Secretary of State about notice of registered agent. So that's a little bit opposite of what you had done. You were saying that you resigned as registered agent. He kept going about giving notice of registered agent, meaning the SatPac people and him and his 21 corporations, letting him know that this is who I am. I'm wondering if right there was a little bit of miscommunication, if he hadn't resigned as registered agent, or he still is, because in his SatPac things, he says he's giving notice of being a registered agent. Then he talked to
Right.
you about that you needed to do the next level. Whoa, what does that mean? Because you deregistered, he registered. Two separate
Right.
things right there.
Right. But we're
When he
talking about
said
two
the
separate.
next level, he was being very, he was being
We're
a little
talking.
more,
We're talking about two
what's the
separate
word?
entities, though. What I resigned from was the
Yeah.
entity that the state created, okay, for you, the legal person, the citizen. And what he's talking about
Mhm.
is putting somebody in the position of being the registered agent for a company that he created. Two totally different situations.
Okay, good. Good. I'm glad that you made
Because
that delineation.
because every company that is set up
He said
has to
because
have a registered agent for service of process, notice, and demand. It's like a lot of people come across a website for the United States Corporation Company, and sometimes it's just called Corporation Company. Well, and they think, oh, I found the Incorporated United States. No, what you found was their registered agent for the company called the United States of America or the United States.
Yeah, and what happens is when you register a corporation of your own, you now get to use that address appropriately as a principal place of business. Whereas under the residency, you're not actually incorporated. So you give the notice of resignation, and that shows that, hey, somebody's rebutted the principal place of business. So you still don't have the availability of using that address as a corporate address, but that's not a problem. But the thing is that if you do want to use it in that fashion, you have to prove your corporate entity.
Yeah, and a corporate entity is proven, if you get in and study, setting up a corporation, it's proven when its letters of incorporation are filed. That is when a corporate entity is
yes.
created.
Right. And you had mentioned in this recording about being unincorporated. There's also other ones like trust, like a trust. I
Right.
have one that's the all caps name, and I believe it's the trust. And I did mine through that Minnesota thing.
And remember, it's called letters of incorporation for a reason, because in fact you have to incorporate under the address, and that's a postal service letter. Are you?
Yeah, and here's a situation as well that there's a distinction people need to see. And I know a lot of people they're like, oh, that word register means royal and you're giving it to the king and okay. If you go and look at Secretary of State's site, Secretary of State is the holder of all certificates, bonds, etc. Their job is basically administration of commerce and businesses. And part of that is businesses and corporations that get started up. And when those things are done, you're going to find them in a certain section of the Secretary of State's site. They list all those things together. You'll find your LLCs, partnerships, trusts, corporations. Those are all going to be together. Now, when you do unincorporated, because this is something that kind of shocked me when I had done that unincorporated DBA, is a couple weeks later, I went on their website and I was scrolling through alphabetical order. I'm like, where am I at? I've gotten my confirmation letter. I have a certificate of good standing. I know I should be here. Why am I not here? And as I'm looking through all of those different registered businesses, I'm noticing that they're all like LLCs, corporations, etc. And I'm like, oh, that's the problem. Mine's unincorporated. So I backed out, went to the search bar and just put in the identifying number for it that they provided me, and boom, it popped right up. And I was like, wow, so they keep the unincorporated in a totally separate area. Now, at the same time, when you're reading through their codes, rules, regulations, or whatever, especially if you're going through like CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, you're going to find everything that they have set up in there for businesses are for incorporated entities. They don't have any laws regarding an unincorporated entity, because you have to look at what the word incorporated means. Incorporated means that two things have joined, or one thing has become part of another thing. Well, something that is unincorporated kind of stands alone. It's not part of a larger structure. It's not part of the state or part of their business community. If that helps clarify things a little there, I hope.
Yeah, it's like that thing that it says in the Bible about when those fallen angels, 200 of them, 1/3 of them came down to earth. They said, "Where we go one, we go all." That was them incorporating and saying, we're all going to be together, joined. Well, that's not really a good thing to say, I guess. Where we go one, we go all. Because that's where
It's
that
true. As
law
as
first
Azell,
mentioned. They're the ones
as Azell and them
that.
got together and they said, "Hey, this is what we want to do. This is, we're going to go after these women." Da da da. And they said, "So we all have to bind ourselves to this agreement."
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, they became basically a corporate body at that
and when
time.
you're applying for an LLC. Yeah, when you're applying for an LLC, a limited liability corporation, you're wanting to be incorporated with the state. So
Correct.
what you did was different. You wanted to claim the name in all caps. You resigned as their registered agent prior, and then you did it doing business as an unincorporated, meaning I'm not with you where you go when you go, all you people over there. I'm not with you. I'm set apart. I'm separate. I'm private. I believe that's what it was. And because I think you're also with associations, right? And how the state cannot be, interfering with associations or unincorporated.
Right.
Well, what it does is it releases the ability of a corporation being able to incorporate you and them, because now you have availability of, instead of a licensure, you have availability of direct contracting with the government, whether it be state, municipal, county, federal, international.
Yeah, exactly. You're separate, and you're actually told. I mean, I don't know if for people that want to follow Scripture or not, I think there's some very useful information there, some directives in there. Even Scripture tells you you're supposed to be a peculiar people. It doesn't mean you're supposed to be weird or strange. Peculiar means set apart.
Right, private. Peculiar.
Correct.
Anytime you see peculiar, think of private.
Yep, you're not part of the normies. Whatever a normie is. But and so
what's normal? What's normal?
Yeah, you decide what's normal. It's like John Lennon said. John Lennon said everybody's normal until you get to know them. But no, that's exactly what I did. I just looked at what the state did. What did the state do? When somebody is born, they go and they create this basically like a vehicle for them to operate through, called the legal person, the juridic person, statutory person. Okay, they create that, and unknowingly, unwittingly, people end up through their life going and acting as an agent or representative for that organization, as they refer to it in the UCC 9 training. They end up being a representative for that agent unknowingly. So I said, oh, shoot, if that's what they did, I'll just do the same thing. First, I'll resign from that one, and then I'll go and create my own. And I'll do what they did too. They took that name that mommy and daddy gifted you with and threw it on their establishment. So I'll just do the same thing. Since it was originally gifted to me, I'll take it and I'll go and I'll put it on my organization that is unincorporated and not part of them.
Yep, and that's what I've explained before.
It's reminding me of what it says in the Bible.
Once you're born,
go ahead, Keith.
You're actually foreign to your mother and father. See, everybody thinks as mom and dad,
yes,
when we have children, that they're our children. No, you were co-trustees in a legacy heir of our Father which art in heaven. Those are still his children. You're still his children. They are just annexed to you in trust for a duration of time, 21 years, 7 times 3, to become full majority to go out upon the world and spread the word of God. Has nothing to do with their fictional elements of anything but the natural process of a trust of nature. No living creature sets their children out among the world thinking that they're just going to be okay, except for very certain ones. And that's because that's their nature. Our nature is to have a protection set up, and that can only be done by a trust. We're falsely led to believe that it takes a village to raise a child. No, it takes a trust to raise a child. That trust is an extension. Father, the dad is the seed of the trust. Once he seeds it, he grants the seed to mom, who is the co-trustee. Now that he's granted the seed, he's done with it. He's done with that part of the trust. Now it goes to her as trustee for the next 9 months. Then it reverts back to co-trustee. Now they both have an element of equal consideration in the trust. Now they both have equal liabilities and responsibilities for the finalization of that trust. Now, if they don't start that trust with the word of our Father, which art in heaven, which explains this process, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, that child is the Holy Spirit. He's not your son. He's not your daughter. He's the Holy Spirit. That is the true benefit. And the true benefactors, the mom and dad, are supposed to pass that knowledge, which is the true, actual benefit of all benefits. Otherwise, you go along in life being an idiot, and people are going to take advantage of you in every aspect.
Keith, yeah, that original jurisdiction is laid out in Jeremiah 1:5.
Yes, no one can sanction the word that is ordained. Sanction meaning made. He made us. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before thou was cast from the womb, I made thee. And in making thee, I ordered you a prophet unto the nations. We're not supposed to fall susceptible to that temptation of the society of a village raises a child. No, the word raises the child. The word brings ascension to the child. No community does that.
Absolutely. Hi, were we at the end of that audio?
No, it was kind of in the middle. Do you want me to play some more?
Yeah, go ahead and finish playing it through. It's only, I think, like 22, 23 minutes long, so there should only be about 10 left.
Securities that may have been set up by a guardian, when you're a minor.
Well, you got to go back to the act that created the securities, and that was the New Deal. Remember, they took money out. So everybody's saying, well, they took money out, they leveraged this, and they collateralized this. Well, they did. It says it represents a mortgage on all of the homes and all of the property of the people. Well, people are property, and so them and everything they possess has been leveraged or mortgaged. So, of course, they would have to create securities. Why? Because nobody's property may be seized and or taken without and used for public use without just compensation. Well, if the government takes and puts a mortgage on your property, that means they're using your property or leasing it for public use. Because the government cannot be private. It has to be public.
And there's compensation there that you just haven't accessed.
These are your compensation. And that's why I've been telling people you need to be asking. Now we have proof that the vital records, vital statistics, pays the state per birth certificate. So where is compensation? This is what we're not doing. And because we're not doing it, and that's where the problem is created.
Yep, we're missing a step.
Yeah, well, what happens again, with the record from vital statistics, with the laws that I've just been talking about on video, you take that, you don't need all of the laws, but I would say you can contact the Library of Congress. I don't know if they'll let you get a copy of a page from the law, Because if they could let you get a certified copy of a particular page from the law, that would be perfect. Because then you can get a copy of the exact section where it is quoted in the law, but I don't think they'll do that because they want money. So they'll make you order the whole thing, and they'll order the whole record. It's hundreds of dollars in the eventual. I'll be contacting them myself personally to order my documents shortly. But once you have that, you now have the record you use as exhibits and say, we have an agreement. I'm part of that contract. The new deal is a contract. So I am part of that contract. I'm a party to the contract. Where is my compensation? You received my value. You have a mortgage on all of my property. Where's my compensation? And it has to be just. It cannot be just according to what a case law says. It has to be just according to my means. It has to equal what you receive. It says just compensation, so that means equal value. Right? And people are not receiving equal value. All this stuff about them taking somebody's home for constructing a bridge or something, eminent domain, and giving them what they claim the market value is? No. That's not what you give me. You don't give me the market value. The market value could be down this year. I've had this property for 40 years. So you have to give me the value of this property for 40 years and the nostalgia and the heritage, and this was in the family for this many years, and we have memories. You have a whole lot more in compensation than give me what the market values my property at. Nobody has ever brought those things up. Or they have ignored them. Cool?
It's all an interpretation of consideration.
Yes, because the Constitution doesn't define just compensation. It doesn't give a definition for just compensation. And because it doesn't give a definition, we have to deal with the normal understanding of just compensation. Just meaning fair. Compensation meaning I need to get paid. So I'm telling people that's what they should be telling government. When government sits up there and denies you, because you have to give government notice, when they deny you, now you can take them to the Federal Court of Claims. Because that's a federal agreement.
Cool.
And they cannot deny the agreement because once they're in breach of the agreement, then that's all she wrote. See, all of this, I should have done a long time ago myself, but I just don't have the time. I got too many things going on. We have to create prospectus. We have to create these other things dealing with the Securities Exchange Commission. I've been putting this stuff off, and I now have to do it. And so I just don't have the time to go and make government see that this was the wrong man to be messing with. But they're starting to get the idea because the DMV just received a 1099-C and 1099-A for $300,000 that they're just going to have to deal with. Oh, by the way, did you all know that discharge does not mean actual discharge?
What do they mean by discharge?
Interesting. You notice how it says that cancellation, when you do a 1099-C, it means cancellation?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, 1099-C discharge without debt cancellation, not a consumer protection law violation. The court says discharge is not actual discharge, which is amazing to me. They say because they discharge it according to their policies, when they do a 1099-C, well, they're not actually discharging the debt. Excuse me? What the? Yes, they're discharging the debt because they're receiving a tax credit when they do the 1099. And how do you get rid of a debt of return? Do you know? I'll give you just a little bit of advice, then I'm going to have to get off because I got to finish this paperwork. But how do you get rid of a debt from a bank? They say you owe them some money. How do you do it without sending them any money?
Good question. 1099-C?
1099-C. So the debt. There are two sides of the ledger, isn't there? Yours and theirs. Nobody's paying attention. It's the opposite method. They gave you a positive, you give them the negative. Cancel the debt. follow the
Yeah, I think there's a lot to the accrual method.
Huh? Say it again?
I said, I think there's a lot to the accrual method.
They've been using it since 1933. Of course it is. GAAP just was created and accepted nationally and internationally in the 1980s? Or was it the 2000s? I don't know when GAAP was done, but GAAP was done, but the accrual method has been done since the 1930s. Well, I think where the United States accepted that as their normal policy, because remember, the government doesn't deal with debts. Everybody misunderstands that. The government doesn't deal with debts. They deal with debit and credits only. The IRS is a debt collector. Why are they a debt collector? Because the IRS is not government. The IRS is a debt collector.
Oh my gosh.
They're engaged in commerce. The Treasury is not government. It engages in commerce. They can maintain sovereignty while engaging in commerce.
So, Dan, you'd like this.
Yes.
I was sitting with a guy that was like a multi-millionaire here several weeks ago, and there was 4 or 5 other guys around, and they had been talking about Bitcoin and different stuff, and he was trying to explain how money is really used, and it wasn't clicking in these guys' head. And I said, listen, it's like this. The peasants use Federal Reserve notes. The rich deal in credit. Yep. And he looked at me and said, exactly, that's how it's done.
Somebody's been yelling at the people since the 1990s. I've been screaming that it's all about credit. It has not been about anything. It's not about debt. It's debits and credits. And you have to offset. It's not about discharge. Even though that's the word used in the statute, it's about offset. Offset is your common law right. Nobody can take that away from you. That's why you do the 1099-C. But I've been doing videos for a whole year telling people go read what the 1099-C is for. 1099-C is to offset debt. Enough people.
You mean it's not to go out and buy new cars and new houses?
No. You can, but people are not understanding that. Yeah, some people have used the 1099-A and gotten a car. But it isn't the 1099-A that got the car. The 1099-A, if you read the instructions, 1099-A doesn't do anything.
Right.
The 1099-A did not get them the car. They bring it to a bank and they have to do all that talking because they have to find a tax agent who knows how to do the whole process. So there are other forms that the bank needs to fill out, that they need to process. And that's what the people are not realizing. So they're all going out there and they have a mixed understandings of it and mixed outcomes because they're not understanding the process. And I promise you, I am not going to do a video explaining to them how to do a 1099-A, 1099-C, or any of that stuff. Because they'll just jump out there and start running without bothering to the rules that says no running allowed.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
People get a little bit of information, and they're out there freaking running up and down the street with their underwear on their head.
That's what they've been doing until 1099. That's why I told Chris Hauser when he took the video out of Chris, I did my video and I said, ask people to take a look at the rules, do their own research first. And he did his video telling people to go ahead and do their research first. Okay. People are not paying attention because, see, he's not giving everybody all the details. Yes, he did the documents. Yes, the document worked. But they're easier instructions. Yes, if I had the time, I could actually do a lot of damage. But I don't have the time because there's too many things that we're working on that we're trying to get done for people. But if I had the time, I could actually have buildings being built right now.
I have the time. I've been reading the instructions.
I could have grants and everything all set up without going through a lot of headaches. I even found a guy, he did a video talking about credits, and he talked about tax credits.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about monetization of tax credits. And I had to contact him. I called him on his cell phone and told him, thank you. I said, I have been yelling and screaming that you can monetize tax credits for years and people have not been getting it. So thank you for being the first one, other than myself on YouTube, for putting that information out there. He actually operates a business doing tax credits. The only problem is he only does it for individuals who have $1 million plus tax credits coming back to them, like big corporations, because he charges $20,000 to do the paperwork. My opinion, yes, the paperwork is absolutely necessary, but $20,000 is way too much. He could do a lot more for helping 5 of the small people than just helping one of the large people. If he was to only do, say, even if he said, okay, $500, I'll do all your paperwork. He's got everything in a template. It takes him just a couple hours or a few hours to fill everything out. I know. He can help everybody. I know. I understand. I promise you I understand, but they stop thinking like that because they get, what's the word? Greedy. Yep. Felt not covet.
You start seeing those dollar signs.
Oh, I got one other thing I'll mention before I get off to this line. I did a video talking about the law and going into court and having the law as your counsel and telling the judge, I have the right to counsel and I choose as my counsel the law. No, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. You get to consult the law. So if you can consult the law, I have the right to consult the law. And as I told people, they'll never bring the law in because they don't go by the law. They don't have any jurisdiction under the law. They have jurisdiction under statute, but not under the law. They are powerless under the law. And so a person just sent me an email saying they did this in court, and the judge yelled and screamed and got irate. And they said, I stuck to my time. Okay. I told people it's a logic that they can't get around. The teddy bear comes sit next to me in the courtroom like I did, and let that be my counsel. There's nobody who can argue with that. There is no law as to whom your counsel can be and how educated your counsel can be and how old your counsel can be. If I wanted to bring my 5-year-old son into court and say, this is my counsel. If I want to bring the Bible and sit that on the podium and say, this is my counsel. This is who I'm going to allow. No, I didn't do a video like that because, sorry, too many people have too many opinions of the Bible and not actual facts of it. And so telling people that they can bring the Bible in and say, this is going to be my counsel, yeah, that would have created too much of a problem. So I didn't do that. But I did know the law, bringing that up and telling people to go in there and say, I want the law as my counsel. I promise you'll be hearing about cases where the courts have said this and said that, and eventually it's going to have to go to the Supreme Court.
It's 2 minutes
Because
left.
you have a choice but to hear it. Go ahead.
Yeah, and in that case, this continued, it'll probably be in an empty courtroom. I mean, that's what the judge said with me. When my case went away, he moved me to an empty courtroom. So nobody could hear what was going on.
Yeah. So I did write the person back and said, the next time a judge yells at you, you say, excuse me, order in the court. And you let them know, order in the court. How dare you sit up here and raise your voice and act and scream in the manner that you just did? How is the public to perceive that? Well, because remember, they use stenographers. So the stenographer doesn't document the yelling and the raising of voices when it comes to the judge. It will do it when it comes to you to make it look like you're the person who was out of line. So you must document on the record their irateness. And then you tell them, I will hold you in contempt of court for operating in that manner, and then I will report you for bringing disrepute up on the court and up on the cloth and up on the craft. And I promise you, there will be some act right. Because they'll have no other choice, because that's what I did in, what state was that? New Mexico with Francis. I reported her judge for doing that exact thing. 2 years later, he was retired. A couple of months later, he was reduced to a juvenile court judge. They're not allowed to inspect the bench. And I go to court, there's always an observer there from the Supreme Court or from the Judicial Council. I am never in that, even though I don't have, and I don't bring any people who know me into court, even though I don't ever have anybody on my side there, there's always an observer there making sure they mind their P's and Q's. There is no yelling from the bench when I'm in court.
There's 1 minute left of this recording.
And I always look for the monitor. I always look for the person sitting up there with the pencil and pen who is out of place. They definitely don't belong there, but you can see that everybody in the courtroom who's somebody, an official, police, or whatever, they all look over to that person. They all know that that person is there. So, all right, let me let you gentlemen go. I have to finish dealing with this plethora of stuff this morning. But right now, 1099-Cs, I'm on that tip. Like I said, I'm in the business of canceling debts. I want to help reduce the public debt. So I'm canceling debts. There you go. Thanks, man. You gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your day and week of work. Okay, have a good day, sir. Yeah, that's me yawning. All right, goodbye. I am.
That's it.
Well, that should
Yeah,
be
he did mention the
somewhat enlightening for people.
1099-Cs. That's how the tax credit is. And then he did talk about monetizing the
Right, monetizing the debt. If, for instance, if you've had to go to court to see, say, for instance, something like credit card issues go away, which is what I did when I first started learning things. I was like, gosh, a lot of people start researching and learning because they're facing jail time. They've got court dates coming up, and they want to start learning things. Unfortunately, when they do that, they've got blinders on because they're pretty much only paying attention to, the obstacle in front of them that they have to deal with. But I didn't have anything going on, so it's like, okay, I let a couple credit card lapse, a couple smaller cards, and sit back and wait for them to go through their whole administrative process of sending me notices, and then eventually it getting sold and being taken in by a third-party debt collector. And so after you go in and you get those problems taken care of, you'll get a letter in the mail from the IRS. It'll be a 1099-C, and you're really, if you are a taxpayer, supposed to be going and claiming that as part of your taxes, because what they're looking at, they're monetizing this debt. That's what they're doing, because they're seeing, say, for instance, if it was $1,000 that got canceled, okay, they're seeing that $1,000 as income to you because it's money you don't have to pay out, and that's how it gets monetized. That's part of their monetization of the debt. So they want to get a buck off it somehow.
Well, I remember when I had my short sale for my house, which was valued at $700,000, because the house next door sold for $600,000, but I ended up having to do a short sale for $385,000, which is what I bought it for. And when they did a cancellation of debt, they did it for the second, which I had a $30,000 second. Well, the IRS called me and they said, oh, well, we see that you have a 1099-C on $30,000, which was my second loan, per se, from the bank, my own credit. I said, I didn't get that money at all. I did not get $30,000. They said, well, we show that that it's a 1099-C and that it can be construed as income. I said, I did not even get that much. They gave me like $3,000 to get all my stuff out of there and hurry up and get out. So apparently I must have signed some waiver that said I'm like waiving all my rights and interests and titles and debentures and all that other junk, which is what I'm addressing now, right now, after 10 years. But the IRS was trying to get taxes out of me for $30,000 as if I had made 30,000 bucks of income. But no, they successfully says, "Oh, okay, well, I guess if you didn't get $30,000, then you don't have to pay any taxes on it." So that's the only way I can see how they would monetize that $30,000 is by me paying taxes on what they were claiming I made, which I didn't get anything. I didn't get that. So I didn't have to pay it. Zero. That's the only way I can see that they what he said here in this recording. He said something about he just finished sending the DMV 1099A and 1099C. Like I thought I heard him say $300,000. So apparently that must be in the driver's license for the insurance or something, and he's making a claim on those insurances or whatever's on that driver's license. I want to do that. And he also said that he's in the business of offsetting debt by canceling
Canceling. I didn't catch him say DMV
debts
specifically,
or
but
something.
When he talks about, may I interrupt?
Oh no, he said that.
May I interrupt real quick?
yeah,
May I
Keith, what's up?
Go ahead.
When he talks about offsetting debt, I want everybody to know you have a venue to check with first to see if there is actual existence of a debt before attempting any offsetting. And that is, in fact, the Treasury offset program. They just search it up and they will give you a number that you can call them. You'll have to go through a query, automated query system. You want to get to a live member to question the record. And what you're going to do is you're going to ask them if there are any debts, public or private, listed against your account. They're going to ask you for your name and your Social Security account. When you give them that, they're going to check, and it's only going to take them a couple minutes, and they're going to come back, and they're going to either let you yes or no. If there is a yes, it's going to be a government debt. But realize under 18 USC Section 8, obligations and other securities to the United States, in that verbiage, it says stamps and other representatives of value. Now, did you guys know that the obligation of the United States rests in that very mortgage that we were talking about earlier? That is held by the Postal Service because they are the ones that hold the real estate investment trust and not the United States. I yield.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things too, people don't realize, and I don't know if this will be able to be seen here or whatever, but a lot of people think that this birth certificate that gets created, and when they create this registered organization, that I don't know, they think it just sits there or something. I'll tell you what, because Eeon referred to this and the payment that's made for it. And if you get the Vital Statistics Handbook, I went and printed it out, and you can see, here's a diagram here, if it shows up, of all of the entities. You're probably not going to be able to see it very well. All of the various entities that get a copy of this or that have access to it. And in this book, there's pages and pages of different entities that access that document for multiple reasons. There's so much activity there; it's like unbelievable when you really look at it.
Yeah,
so there's a lot of things happening in the background.
That's why I always talk about the Form 715. It's a military declassification, demilitarization. That's why I put my statement of separation out. I'm not part of their military, and as far as I'm concerned, I could be looked at as committing espionage if I give out information I'm not classified to do. And that's why they have classified availability and I don't. If they have classified access and I'm the one giving it out, shouldn't I too have classified access? But if I don't, does that mean I'm giving out classified information? Most certainly.
Well, and there's very good reason to believe that, well, when that document is created, that there's actually a probate account that's opened up regarding that. And hopefully there's going to be some more information regarding that coming up in the near future.
Well,
but there's definitely evidence.
Well, that's the only thing that can be created, Brian, because a court of probate does not have jurisdiction over the estate of a person who is in fact alive. And that's what you were talking about earlier, the living will. If there's a living will, there can't be a probate court. So when the man, the living soul, walks into court, that should automatically extinguish any jurisdiction of probate.
Yeah, the body corrects any mistake in the name.
Yep.
Exactly. Well, I think this was pretty enlightening. I have somebody with a hand up. Just a second here.
I think we have one or two people that have some questions or something.
Okay, let me jump over to them. And Keith and Haya, I will keep you guys unmuted. And I will go to those who are starred. And I've got a 304 area code here. And so I'm going to open the line for you. So 304, if you had a question or something you want to bring up, feel free.
Hello, Brian. This is Ken.
Hey, Ken, how you doing?
To raise two issues. Okay. Thanks for taking my call. One of the questions, I think the second one should probably be addressed to Keith because he's talked more about this, I think, than you have. But the first one is regarding this all cap name, if you will. Could someone else, such as a family member, make some type of claim on that all cap name when you're talking about, you do a rescission or whatever regarding the power of attorney or the use of the name? Could someone else claim that name for some type of legal purposes to bring an action after someone is deceased?
Okay.
Or
in regards to your question, I'm going to make it really simple, man. I looked up the record for Keith Little in this area and come up with 7 different Keith Little, so I had to go to the middle name. You can make any legal name you want. Mm-hmm. Along with that legal name, it's going to have a number, and that's going to separate it from any other identical legal name. It, too, under that legal name, is likely going to have a representative symbol known as a mark or a logo or something, or a motto or a mission. And those two are going to be enumerations that are going to show differences. So the legal name has nothing to do with it. It's the enumeration. And like Brian was saying earlier, the charter. You have to have a definitive charter.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Brian, you want to add anything to that? Or?
Well, as far as who can make inquiries and things like that, I mean, like you see in the birth certificate handbook, there's just multiple outside companies, but they're all ones that have previously had agreements with the state, and so they can have access to it. Now, as far as family members and stuff, if you simply go and look on the directions, for instance, for ordering a birth certificate, you're going to find your answer there, because it'll say in there that it can be, for instance, like a legal guardian or a parent. I think some of the rules might change as far as that goes after you turn 18 years old, but that right there will give you some hints as well.
Well, in regards to turning 18 years old and doing that SS5, there's also, in relations to your question there, Ken, the Form 5511, next of kin. As an 18-year-old coming age of majority, you are, in fact, the next of kin to the person. The next of kin to you would be like your mom. She's the one that gave birth to you. Comprehend that? Mm-hmm. So it's Form 5511, next of kin. Put that in your search engine. You'll come up with that next of kin document you can enter. And you just simply explain it like I did.
Thank you.
You recognize the person as a decedent estate, and you are its next of kin as the living soul. Okay, I yield.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks, Ken. I've got a. Oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
all good.
question
Something
was-
else.
I had a second.
About someone that
I had a second issue.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, Ken, go ahead with your second question.
Yeah, on the okay. I was looking at the news yesterday, and I don't have a lot of information on it, but Keith has talked about in the past about private membership associations, PMAs, and I was noticing that there was a gentleman by the name of Miller, excuse me, who has an Amish farm, who apparently does not conform with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's terms for processing meat. And he has contracts with people around the country. They slaughter a cow and he sends it around the country. He also does, I guess, locally milk and eggs, etc. Now, it was my impression that when PMAs were talked about before, excuse me, that if one had a PMA, that it really wasn't of utmost importance as to what the status, standing, capacity, or character of the individuals within that PMA were, but it was the fact that there was a PMA and those people belong to it. Is this becoming a much, and unfortunately I don't have a lot of details to give you because I just don't have them, but could this becoming a much bigger issue with just the use of PMAs? Now it be possibly said that this is the status of the individual that's in the PMA or the man or woman that's in the PMA, and therefore it doesn't matter if you have a PMA because you don't have the correct status as they view it?
Even as a PMA, you still have to follow a certain process. In that process, like I said earlier, there's an import and export issue. That issue is a entrepot. If they're a private association, they are the entrepot. Now, as an entrepot, if they don't charge people for a tax for shipping their product from private entity to private entity, end to end, then nobody can interfere with that. And so what they have to do is be able to implement the ability to pass their products through the post office and not in the mails. Now, in doing so, that private contract doesn't even have to be considering the post office. It just has to consider a fidelity agreement with the post office for the provision of private shippers. There's still going to be a contract related to the postal road. Now, this is done by address. If it's going from end to end, private address to private address, you can enforce the shipment through the post office according to international postal shipments. But each end has to be private to private, guys. You got to understand country of origin, final destination, and trustees. The post office has got to be your trustee. When you start entering things into the mail, that's your letters and stuff that we were talking about earlier. That's your documentation of all your contracts. So if it's entering in the mails, then you're not passing through the post office. You're entering into public contracts. Whereas if you've actually got a private contract, then the Postal Service shouldn't have any recognition of anything but the two private ends. And that is what it enforces, that you are private. It's a private foundation recognized by the Postal Service because nobody else has interfered with your private conduct yet. You've established that. Until you establish that, you will never defeat their import-exports. You will always find yourself subjected to their taxes. You got to learn the import-export and that you're the center, you're the creditor. They don't have any right to charge for anything extra as a postal service if you use a private shipper. Because if that private shipper's a private shipper and has a license, there's already a fidelity agreement through that shipper. So all you got to do is use one of their licensed private shippers from end to end. You understand?
Well, to add to that as well,
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of that situation that you really don't know what was going on with that farmer, where he might have had a private association set up that was doing all of the work and everything, but you don't know what outside contracts were made. For instance, were some of the people that he was offering a service to, were they a member of his private association? If they were not a member of his private association, or if they were using other benefits, for instance, for like shipping, like Keith explained, or other things that are provided by the state, well, now they've given the state jurisdiction over their actions.
Exactly. And that's what I was explaining about that shipper.
I heard
You gotta
about it.
know the contracts and be able to incorporate them privately. I yield.
All right, Ken, now is
Susan
that
called me
Okay.
about that, and she said that it's got to do with someone having listeria after having unpasteurized milk, and that they were going in as a public, the state, I guess, was trying to interfere as a public protection for the public. And they were claiming that they're private membership association. So now I think they're trying to do legislation against that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they can't.
I'm having
Because,
trouble
like I
hearing
said,
what the
if
young
it's a
lady
true
is
That's what
saying.
private
that's
trust,
about.
like I said, if it's a true private trust, and you're incorporating that private service as the trustee through the post office, then that's what it is, and that's the only way you can do it. Same with all your other contracts. You have to indenture them privately as a private association. That's what I've been doing with PayPal and Zoom, and I'm just going to get me my own talk show platform. I think, Brian, Zoom is so difficult. So I'm liking TalkShoe more and more, guys.
All right, I'm going to jump over to Val. She's had her hand up for a while. So, Val, if you're available, I'm going to open up the floor to you. All right, Val, you there?
Hi, can you hear me? This is actually
Yeah, how
him.
you doing?
Hey, splendid. How are you, gentlemen? Thank you so much for what you're doing. I have a few questions. Maybe you can chime in on that. Uh, First one, in regards of resignation sort of office, I happen to find myself on two or into so-called jurisdictions. I was born abroad and ended up here in the United so-called States. And I'm the green card holder. And in case of resignation from the agent's office, what you see the implications might be or not be. Um, that would be one thing, which I don't know if it has been addressed somewhere in your videos or talks. I haven't come across yet because I found you fairly recently.
All right, Val, I've got a couple people actually who are going through that line of thinking right now, and they're looking to see what can be done. One of the questions, of course, with these people would be, well, I don't have a certificate of live birth from the U.S. or anything like that, and maybe their country of birth didn't offer it as well. They had something different. If you were born abroad and came here and naturalized here, in lieu of the certificate of live birth would be the naturalization paperwork that creates that position. So that's what would be used. Now, as far as results of it and that kind of thing, I don't really want to say what my thoughts are on it, because that would be nothing but pure speculation, which is what I don't like doing. I like talking about what I've actually done and seen results from. So, like I said, I know of a couple people that are working on that right now. And when they're completed with that and maybe some results start coming in from it, then there'd be a better answer to that portion of it. What else did you have, Val?
Thank you for that. The other thing which I had what we would call a successful or positive result when I had to renew. Well, I haven't been naturalized per se. It was just like this application for green card. But when the time came to renew that particular thing, what I did, I sent in the letter with some nomenclature in there regarding the name. I sent a translated copy of the original certificate of birth, and I sent in the information about this BBA or assumed name certificate. And what happened was, it kind of surprised me. The money which needed to be paid for that, it got waived. I mean, they renewed that green card without actually collecting any funds, any money for that, which is or was at the time $850 or so. Do, do, maybe you can kind of, I don't know, what do you think transpired if I was able to give you enough information?
This is a hunch that I have watching this over the past few years. And we've heard a lot of people, for instance, complain that people come in from other countries and they get like these extra freebies. I would say, for instance, look at a lot of people, for instance, that may come in from the Middle East and they purchase a store or a hotel and they get like a 4 or 5 year grace period on taxes on it. And if you go into some of those businesses, you notice it seems like it's all family members working in there. Well, why is that? It's because before that 4 or 5 year period is up, they transfer ownership to one of the other family members that came over here from another country. And I really think, without going into detail of extra other perks that they get monthly or whatever, or housing wise, I stop and think, hold on, what would be the difference between those people and somebody that's born here? And to me, the only difference that I see between us born here and somebody that emigrates here from somewhere else is that through the naturalization process, they actually make an oath and allegiance to the United States through the process, whereas people that are born here never do. So I don't know. That could be a little bit of the difference there.
Okay. And one last thing.
I thought our oath was our signature.
Yeah, but I haven't given any oath to, and I don't have any allegiance, so to speak. In order to obtain green card, you don't have to do that. You just send in the application, and eventually, well, they look at you, and through work visa, or in my case, through marriage, they just approve you to be so-called resident. Yeah.
Well, the question would be, there's not like a box that you check off where you pledge anything or make any agreements?
No, not for green card. For the residency, it doesn't require that. No. One thing though, which is on the application, is this for office use only, and it says chargeable country. So, which makes me think that maybe I don't know. If it wasn't for the assumed name certificate, which is assumed name, so I don't think they could charge it. And also that the birth certificate, where I wrote, it doesn't actually identify the author of the letter that was put in there. But then again, on the original application, or when it was first created and signed, there is this little box with a chargeable country. So my presumption is that they went back to through whatever the monetary connections there are. They went back to the I don't know, to the securities being associated with that original birth certificate, or that original person created it overseas, and perhaps they used to offset that from there. Well, that's purely speculation, but I don't know.
Well, I would say that, since they've got like the box there or whatever regarding a chargeable country, to me, that just gives you the facts that you need to know. That, guess what? They have different contracts, treaties, agreements with various countries. Same thing as with like through the authentication process and choosing, you have to choose a non-Hague country, is because there's different agreements put in with different countries. Certain countries fall under certain requirements and other countries don't, and they're all different. So it really would depend on the country of origin and what contracts and agreements they have in place in the background. That's what it all comes down to, is the contracts, because the contract makes the law. Right. One of the things I think people should keep in mind, and this is a little clue, a little hint here, is that with the authentication process and it being a non-Hague country that you have to use, you have to go back to the Hague Treaty and see what that's all about. And what this all is coming down to and referring to is a word called adoption. It's about adoptions and foreign adoptions.
Amen.
And so what is being adopted? You are adopting something. And so just kind of keep that in the back of your head, because that's a big part of it there. And what's really being adopted is a notice of interest in an organization that was created. That's what's happening there.
And can I say something as well here real quick? In regards to what we call private member associations, They go to the different organizations, corporations, nonprofit, profit, this and that. Those are all, they all have private members according to their association. Okay. Whereas I posted in the chat section 26 CFR 1.508-1 subsection B recognizes private foundations. There is a presumption of private foundation, in fact. And this is just so long as you haven't communicated with the IRS, then you're presumed to be a private foundation already. And this with regardless of name, enumeration, or anything. And this is the basis that I use in regards to the Keith Orland Little faith-based union. It's faith-based, it's a private foundation, and it's in union with the post office, the postal union, because I'm following its regulations. I'm proving its regulations. They're the true grantor in that situation, grantee. Taxes, folks, are duly paid by stamp. Nowhere in the code have I ever found that taxes are paid in any other way. Period. I yield.
I hope that answers your questions there, Val.
Yeah. If the time permits, maybe one last thing. If there are any, I don't know, recommendations or suggestions, or just thoughts on new parents going through the process, sort of the registering that event.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And my recommendation for new parents, see, there's something that used to be done a long time ago. And that was that, especially like smaller towns, small local papers, you would see, you see wedding announcements in there, right? People announce that, oh, my daughter is getting married to whoever, Joe Sixpack. But you'd also see in there birth announcements, Joe and Mary are expecting a newborn baby. And they claim they stopped doing that because people were afraid of child abductions from the hospital and things like that, which I call complete nonsense on. But what that was that's the way of standing in honor, is giving notice. That's why you'll see a business section in the back of newspaper. It's for giving notice. That's the way you stand in honor. And my recommendation, if I were expecting offspring coming up shortly, I would go and supply notice according to the specifications for publishing. And I would just pop that in the paper saying that I and my wife, or I and my spouse, are expecting the arrival of new offspring shortly, and make your claim there before anybody else ever has a chance to make a claim on it. It's called first in time, first in right. So you've got priority, and you do that. And then when it comes to the whole paperwork issue with the hospital, an option could be to go the route that people have gone for thousands of years: have the baby at home.
Right. And not only that, but I hope to help out in that, because like I said, folks, I have my own international site, and I can post such notices as a private journalist in an art form, making a memorial for you and following it up with an epoch file number of your own. Public notice in the World Wide Web.
Where can we find that website?
I will post it here in the comment section.
Well, appreciate it. But would the situation change if the child is already born?
No, you can retroactive. My mistake. There were errors made on the record. The record needs to be corrected, as the record must reflect accurately. And I was not born in a military unit.
Right. Well, the record has not been made with the state as of yet, even though the 30 days, which they put in the statutes, have lapsed.
Yeah, it's a prevention of that record, because that record eventually will carry on to the National Archives. And you don't want to commit any errors on the National Archives now, do you?
Well, of course not, yeah.
There you go.
Val, let me point at something here that you alluded to. You said there is a 30-day requirement in the statutes, right?
Yeah.
Now, what does that requirement say? Does it say that within 30 days that a registration must be done by you?
Yeah, well, it says actually by the parents. Yeah, they must go to the county registry and make that information act of informing. Yeah,
Right.
about yeah.
Well, and here's the issue I have, and this comes down to any order of anybody registering anything, is that I do not have the authority to register anything. Nothing at all. I don't have that power. I am not a government employee. I don't work for the courts. I don't have the
So,
power of registration. The only one that has a power of registration would be the state registrar.
Right.
Now, guess what? You don't have to turn over information that could be harmful or not be beneficial to you. So if you choose to not give them any information because you don't think it would be in your benefit,
Mhm.
then fine, you don't. And guess who has failed to do the registration? The only one that's failed to do the registration is the registrar, because the registrar is the only one with the authority to register anything.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
You got it, bro. All right, I don't think we've
He
got
could do
any
something
more
in the
hands up.
Bible, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As well as, publishing it in the newspaper ahead of time. You do the same thing, even if you're going to be getting married. If you go to those old family Bibles, in the front of it, there is a section for births, for deaths, for marriages, and that's where everything can be put. And I even found on the Department of State's website for passports, they had a listing on there of what documents that they accept for passports. One of them was an entry in a family Bible for the birth in lieu of a birth certificate. So instead of a birth certificate, they would accept an entry in the family Bible. And you can do that. I strongly recommend that for new offspring coming into this realm, is that you list them there, and you also list witnesses, have a couple witnesses there. I've had people ask me, oh, well, I was born 25 years ago, and so there's no way of doing that. Well, wait a minute, you can still do that, and you can still have witnesses. The only thing the witnesses are witnessing is the entry into the family Bible. They're not attesting to having stood there in the delivery room, um, and getting hot cloths for mom or anything like that. No, they're just witnessing the entry in the family Bible, so it can be done at any time. All right, I don't think we
Ryan, I
got
am
anybody
dropping
else.
four verses. I am dropping 4 verses in the chat section
All right,
for
cool.
people to put down. These are 4 verses that you can use to destroy every part of their record.
And at the same time, I'll just let people know, if you go to the talk shoe site for this episode, there's a transcription that's automatically done. So if somebody wants to get a transcript, you can get a transcript as well. It's free. You just have to download it. That's something that they provide on TalkShoe. So, but this will hopefully pop up to YouTube, and we'll see how the recording transfers.
And remember, the intent of those 4 verses starts out with the first one. Fear not, for I have redeemed thee. If I've been redeemed and this is my child, and I am now the redeemer, as it says in Leviticus 25, verse 24, and all the lands of my possession, I too redeem this child in his name. He is now his. How dare you misconstrue it any other way? I yield.
And it just adds something to that before we jump off here. Is that I think back to a lot of different people, for instance, who've tried to cancel like the Social Security number or the Social Security card or whatever. And conversations that you have with the Social Security Department because that you have are interesting is that they really tell you what to do with all of this stuff because they at birth where some of those arrows go to on that a birth certificate and information sheet. It's that this information is going all over the place at the time of birth. Information gets sent to Social Security, for instance, and that's when the Social Security number is created. It doesn't get created when somebody goes and applies for an SS5. They're applying for the number that was already established for that entity that was created shortly after the time of birth, which is generally about 10 days. I've seen some as long as a year, but it's generally about 10 to 14 days afterwards is when this is done. If you notice that date on the certificate of live birth, that's the important date that should be paid attention to right there, because that's the date when that organization was organized. But what the Social Security Department will tell you, because since they created the number, then you have no power to destroy that number. Only they can do that, and they're not going to. But
Well,
what they do tell you to do is they tell you it's very simple. Just stop using it. And
right.
so it's the same thing when the baby is born and you've made your claim. You go and establish your legal person, and your offspring can then use that, and that's who they're going to be through life, and not use what the state created. Leave that dormant. It'll pass away after 3 years. All right, I was going to sign out here. Anything you want to close with, Keith or Haya?
Well, I'm going to drop one more verse in the chat section. I want everybody to realize the first 4 verses is how you make the demand, and then the last verse is the enforcement. See,
Cool.
that's the first 4 will destroy their entire record. The last one will enforce it. Learn how to use them. I yield. Other than that, if it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be here. God bless. Thanks for attending tonight.
There you go, guys. And I've got one more visitor here with a hand up.
So for that,
And I'm going to jump over and see if I can unmute them. And they just disappeared. Here they are. Tambay2. Unmute you. And what did you have
Hear me?
for us? Yeah, how you doing?
Oh, good. How are you?
Good.
I'm kind of a newbie, and I just wondered. I listened to your or one of the calls last week with KW, and I was interested to know: do debts have to be paid off before you resign as registered agent?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Look up Lord's release. Look up the Lord's release, and then see Deuteronomy chapter 15 in the King James Version of the Bible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But
Thank you. I
that
appreciate that.
does not necessarily mean there will be a complete dissolution. I was looking at a situation here not too long ago where the townspeople, I don't remember the name of the town, but these townspeople were wanting to do a dissolution of the town that they lived in, of its corporate capacity. And the judge ruled that they could not do that because the town still owed like $130,000 or something like that. So it could put a little bit of a wrinkle into things, but that'd be interesting to see what happens with it. All right, folks, like we say every week, if you really want to know what things are about,
1099C.
yeah, and read the instructions on it. Like Eeon said, the important thing is nobody's reading the instructions. But I can tell people every week, learn who you really are, where you're really from, and where you're really at. Because those are the things that we've all been deceived on, and that's where your answers lay. Thanks, guys.